In the distant future, vampires rule the night, but their numbers are dwindling. One podcast is unlike all the others. Half human, half vampire. This is Lefty Speaks, the official podcast for Vampire Hunter D.
Hello, hunters, and welcome back to Lefty Speaks, the official Vampire Hunter D podcast. Today, we are going to be diving into the first Vampire Hunter D movie, since I know many of you have just gone and seen it again since there's been a re-release of it here in North America. And if you're not in North America and you want to check it out, there's DVDs, the internet, we've got copies. I think I've got 3 different versions and copies of it over the years. So check it out if you haven't. It's a great piece of history from, mid 80s and part of, what got anime going outside of Japan and, woke up a lot of people to, what is there, particularly films like that, Akira, the original Ghost in the Shell. And I just love how much they pioneered just bringing a different form of animation outside of, what Disney did to America and kind of showing us, hey, there's more here. You can do a lot more. And so I just love that bit of history to it. So here we go. We are diving into the first Vampire Hunter D movie, which is adapted from the first book in the Vampire Hunter D series.
Yeah, it's interesting because I hadn't watched it in a long time, and I just watched it again, and I'm like kind of bipolar about it right now because on one hand, I have to put myself into the headspace of seeing it for the first time in the early 90s, edited on American or cable television. And then I got to put myself in the headspace of being 50 years old and looking at it and not delving into the Mystery Science Theater 3000 of it all. Because on one hand, it's absolutely beautiful in certain parts. And in other parts, it's hard not to laugh. And I don't mean that in a bad way because I feel like Magnus Lee looks like George W. Bush. And every time I look at him, I keep thinking to myself, okay, that's not Bush. They didn't know it. They had no idea he was going to look like that. And then I know that maybe they were saving money because he's sitting like this the entire movie until like the end. But it's interesting to look at as an artifact of time because it does help spur the conversation that animation is not a juvenile medium or genre. Because people, I just had a conversation with friends and colleagues recently at lunch, and they don't work in entertainment. They're as furthest away from entertainment you could possibly be. And I was telling them about different animation, and they still think of animation as just the Minions or Moana, which is fine, nothing wrong with that, but that's not all it can do. And I feel like one of the values of Vampire Hunter D85 is the fact that it doesn't lean into all these juvenile tropes, because the amount of violence and nudity and and pseudo-sexual content puts it in a different place.
Yeah.
So I feel like going into it, it's really interesting to analyze it because, like I said, there's two views I'm looking at it from: early 90s and 2025.
And I think that's a really important thing to think about because we have that in all medium, whether it's music, movies, novels, comic books, everything. They are a product of their time. And we can either try to look at it through the lens of like strictly modern day
Right.
lens, which some things are offensive or bad or completely wrong, and then other times they're insightful. But if we can then look at it through the lens of that time period and see the significance, the nuances, and of the context in which that piece was made, we learn about ourselves, we learn about our time, and we learn about that slice in time as well. And I think that on social media that's often lost.
Right.
Nuance out the window.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, thanks for bringing that up because that
Mhm.
was, yeah. Me too. When I first saw it, it was probably in like 89 or 90
Hmm.
or something like that. And I was at university. And unlike a lot of people, I had grown up in Iowa. I was totally into martial arts, and so I didn't watch anime at all, despite the fact that I loved Japanese culture and comic books. There was no I didn't have a VCR. There was no internet, and we
Mm.
none of the channels in Iowa carried any of those, like no animation at all. I mean, like Super Friends and GI Joe and He-Man that's all I got. So that really didn't interest me as much at that age. So I didn't really get exposed to it till university, and watching it on like old, when VHS really started becoming popular. So yeah, it was a momentous event for me. It's like, wow, whole new world.
Yeah, one of the things I found compelling about this movie from the very beginning, it shows you that this is not a safe, pleasant, or fun
Hmm.
world. You know, the Earth has become a very scary place, and that's something that I saw the number of people in a discussion about the book franchise on our Discord. And one of the comments someone made, unless I was this immortal, unkillable, superpowered Dompier,
Hmm.
I don't think I'd want to live
Right.
in the VHD world,
Yeah.
because it does have a lot of tragedy and danger to it. And I think when you look at the movie, it throws you right into that. I mean, here Doris is this beautiful young woman
Hmm.
running through the night with a rifle to defend her farm. And while she defends her farm, her animal, her horse, is attacked and wounded. She manages to kill the thing that was attacking the farm, only for a werewolf to then attack, finish off the horse, and rip her necklace off so that the count can grab her.
Hmm.
I mean, you went from just trying to defend your farm from a dangerous poaching animal to getting bit by a vampire. That's a 0 to 100.
Yeah, and
Hey.
losing the horse, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you trade losing a few pieces, some fruit that this animal might have eaten, and now you've lost your horse. You've now been bitten by a vampire. Yeah, there's yeah, like you said, 0 to 100.
And
Like,
not to mention that creature looked like an evil version of Dino from the Flintstones. I don't know what
yeah,
that was supposed to be, like a brontosaurus raptor. But yeah, that was a very interesting creature. I mean, I was more interested in the thing she was shooting at than anything else. When I first saw it, I was like, "What is that?" Like, literally, it was a brontosaurus raptor, but a little one. It was really cool, very cool animal. And
and it
yeah, I
took
mean,
like 10 hits too. I mean,
yeah, she kept shooting it. Right, he
like
wouldn't go
blood
down.
everywhere, and it kept going. Like,
That was fun.
wow.
Yeah, but you are right. I mean, the moment it starts, it looks like hell on earth. There's no light, and then Magnus shows up, and I did like the imagery of the silhouette to
Mhm,
kind of establish his size, his power, his strength in very little words. You just saw it. It's show not tell. It's like when Vader walks through the door in
mhm.
episode 4. In the very beginning, his size, the silhouette, the darkness. It tells you everything you need to know without him saying, "I'm the baddest dude around." So it's a great way. Yeah, it's one of the best openings of any, anime. I put it up there with Akira and Ghost in the Shell. It's really great openings that just grab you, you know.
Yeah, it tells you exactly what kind of ride you just signed up for.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it also
And
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I love that when a movie or a show does that, it's not trying to be six different things. It's like
Right.
when I worked in theatrical distribution, it was the weekend after Expendables came out. Walked into our break room, kitchen area in the office, and one of our VPs was there, and Paul and I were talking about it. And he said, it was really bad. I had a great time. And he's got this giant smile on his face because we saw it. We both agreed. It's not Oscar winning. It's not trying to pretend to be something it's not. It is just fun, silly action movie. And that's what it promised you. And that's what it delivered. And we were like, this is beautiful because it's it promised you something. It delivered it and it was fun. And that's something I love about right here in the first, opening of the film, first 2 minutes, exactly what you're on a ride for here. I love it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's nice because like you said, it is definitely setting up that this isn't just animation for kids. It's and I felt it was very cinematic. I mean, the shot angles. I mean, obviously, how they framed everything was really cinematic. It felt, when I rewatched it, also, this week, I was really re-impressed with the thought, and again, this was a long time ago, so animation was done very differently. And so I think, again, we talk about Akira, a Ghost in the Shell, and a few others alongside this one as animated films that really elevated the genre, and to a different level. I just find it interesting that Vampire Hunter D was not successful in Japan, but then was just like this like sleeper hit internationally. So
Something I find surprising that a lot of people don't know is how popular Vampire Hunter D is with non-Japanese audiences. I saw somebody doing a breakdown, of the great, selling franchises in fantasy, which technically I guess I can see Vampire Hunter D is more, horror sci-fi, so not strictly fantasy. And they're talking about, oh, these are some great franchises, bestsellers, everything from the smaller end to Harry Potter at 250 million copies sold. And so Aragorn sold 7 before it fell apart. You had Stephen King's The Dark Tower, sold like 10-ish. Cosmere's at around 20 for the Brandon Sanderson thing. You've got that range there. And Vampire Hunter D, when you factor in all of the English sales, the audiobooks, ebooks, all of that, as best we can compile, Vampire Hunter D is north of 20 million copies in the wild. That's a huge audience. Now, there are only, 120, 130 million people in Japan? So, unless, a sixth of the Japanese population around there has bought all the books, that means that, it's really popular outside of Japan.
Well, if you add in Shohei Ohtani as a character, then you will get 1/3 or 2/3 of the Japanese population buying those books. But yeah, I mean, but it's great. And one of the things that's really interesting, and I would put this to our audience on our Discord server, is that what are your opinions? This is a question I'm throwing out before we move on. What are your opinions on the original dub, the new dub, and the original Japanese dialogue tracks? Because I know that one of the some of the older DVDs have the original dub, and then I think one of the new, I don't know if it's a theatrical release that just got the 40th anniversary, has a brand new dub. But I've seen a lot of chatter on Reddit, on the Vampire Hunter D Facebook pages, and so forth and so on, where there's been a pretty significant debate about the original dub, the new dub, and obviously the original language. So I'm wondering if anybody had any thoughts about that when this is released. Please put your thoughts in the Discord, because I would love to hear what you think. Because I have my own opinion too, but I'm going to reserve that for now.
Okay. That should be fun. So if you haven't found us, it's in the comments. You'll find a link, or if you want to just type it in, we are literally discord.gg/VampireHunterD.
It's gonna be a really fun discussion. Yeah. Because outside of going to the theater recently, the other version I watched was my Japanese
Wow.
VHS version, which does, it's from Japan. So it doesn't even have subtitles or
Subtitles.
anything. And I'm like, I'm trying really hard,
Yeah, I
because,
have.
yeah.
Oh, I have the old version with the English subtitles from the American original
Right.
DVD release. And then I have a Blu-ray from Sentai of the new dub. But to me, the difference in that debate, particularly the vocal, what people talk about, both the dialogue and the vocal performance, I really am looking forward to us doing a discussion on adaptation for animation and the things that make, break, or that sliding scale in the middle, because there are so many things that shape it. And just the fact that we've got this debate of, well, which version of the dub is better, it just, I think, highlights those nuances. So, all right, back to the movie. So after Doris gets bit, she's now looking for help because she knows she's not gonna save herself. She already lost to Magnus, got bit. So she's out on the road attacking travelers that look like they're fighters or hunters, trying to find someone who can best her so that she can recruit them. I'm like, all right, trial by fire, sure. It makes sense in the world of Vampire Hunter D. If you're traveling alone through the frontier, you're either insane or do so because you can defend yourself and you're not worried. Thankfully for D, he falls into the latter category, and so he has no problem shrugging her off and accepts her offer. And the difference, I think, between the book and here with the movie, I agree with the change they did because it's a lot less complicated. It's more of a, hey, you passed the test. Here's my problem. If you're a vampire hunter, I need the local noble killed. I want to hire you. And she says it of, I don't have a lot of money, but you can have anything I've got, including me, which makes sense in the context of, the frontier and that world. When you're desperate, you take any port in the storm. What's the price you're not willing to pay? And unfortunately, I think that's a tragic reality to human history that we've seen over the centuries. And I know that idea offends a lot of people, but if we try to turn away from it, to me, one of the worst things we can do is ignore history, because ignorance means we're doomed to repeat. We don't learn. So I like the fact that it's put in the book, but not dragged out. It's not made a great spectacle of in the movie. It's here, it's an instant, and we're moving on. As D says, no, that's not what I want as payment, because of who he is and the choices he's made of how he's going to live. And I like that this is a, I will call it contentious topic that's brought in, but not necessarily dwelled on.
Yeah, we've spoken about that in a few episodes previous about the underlying kind of sexual bartering, and kind of a sex trade that does exist in the frontier. And again, it's not something that's easy or fun to talk about, but it's a very real part of life, and in our real world, and also in the fantasy world of Vampire Hunter D. The one thing I would think about that scene, I like the way it was storyboarded or how it was directed. The one thing I've always wondered, and this is me being like funny about it again, is it like, was Doris superhuman because she jumps like 400 feet in the air and unleashes that crazy splitting squid whip, and it wraps around him. And I was just wondering, in my head as I'm watching, I'm like, is she a superhuman? Because she's doing some really amazing stuff as a fighter, But yeah, it was a really cool scene. It also demonstrates that she's not weak. It demonstrates that she has some kind of agency in her life, even though she's a victim, sort of a victim of a super powerful vampire lord. She's not laying down, so to speak. She's not going to just take this and whimper in a corner. And that was something very interesting you saw of the women characters in this first film, especially the daughter, which we'll get to. Lee's daughter, which I felt was a very interesting character that in many ways I felt deserved more. I haven't read that book in forever, so I don't remember how much she was developed, but I felt that Lee's daughter was an amazing character to go along, kind of a parallel to Doris. So we'll get to that later too.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the interesting things about the changes from the novel to the animation is that they did try to make things a little bit more simple and more cinematic. So there was, like both Doris and Larmika have unique, more layered
Hmm.
opinions and more layered kind of internal struggles that they don't really dive into too deeply into the animated feature. I mean, for obviously time, time reasons. But, yeah. The other thing, it was like that when you mentioned the werewolf removing her cross, there are no crosses at all in the novel because, we human beings have been genetically altered, over centuries to have mostly forgotten religion, any weaknesses of vampires. So, most folklore and myths are only recent things. They don't really, so there's no, like, all the crosses that in the movies are really just for us to kind of symbolize, and the viewer to have a
Hmm.
shorthand.
Shorthand, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense for the animated films, though.
it's a visual medium. It's show don't
Yep,
tell.
yep.
So I suppose continuing that, one of the things that I like about this next scene is when we get to the farm, Doris brings Dee back, and the first thing we see is the little boy fighting to defend the farm because their livestock is being attacked by this weird energy cloud that just, like, you look at that and you're like, okay, how do we run faster than that thing that just grabs it, and it looks like a insanely painful way to go of just getting torn apart inside this weird electric acid cloud?
Whatever
Yeah.
that was, yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is. Bad news. But this little kid is wielding a rifle, driving it away to protect the farm. And again, I would not want to live in the frontier, perfectly highlighted here. And so we're introduced to Dan. He gets to meet Dee, and we move on to the town. And in the wagon ride there, I love the little moment where Dan is trying to imitate Dee because he's already starting to look up to this, what he thinks is this. Oh, you're a vampire hunter? You're here because we learn a little later their father was a werewolf hunter
Hmm.
who died because he had to go fight a vampire.
Hmm.
And so here's the vampire hunter, the pinnacle of the hunter world. And so this little boy is already latching onto him of, oh, okay, he's sitting like that, I'm gonna sit like that too. Classic small child thing. I like those little moments that the film puts in, and you're it's there and you're moving past. It's half a second, but it adds great layer of character. To me, the fun part came next, where we meet the Greco, the
Mm.
mayor's dandy idiot son, that even the father realizes how much of an idiot he is.
Mhm.
And to Brandon, to your point earlier of Doris's not being weak or lacking agency. She's Greco's here to blackmail her
Mhm.
and extort her for sex and you know basically be my possession as I've always wanted. Because what does somebody like that want? Well, I want the thing that's being denied to me. Why? Because, well, I'm a terrible person, and so I'm going to use any means necessary. And I love the fact that she's like, fine, what do you have? I'll listen to you. Uh, then she proceeds to beat the snot out of him. It's great. But, we move on from that. And after she beats him up, he just says, fine, I'm going to ruin you to the whole town. You've been bitten.
Mhm.
Haha, take that. Oh, wait, my pettiness. How am I going to get her now that she's a pariah? Huh. But I thought it was a great job of showing just, it's a bit of a, I would say kind of a genre trope character, but they did a good job, I think, just rolling him out of he looked like the dandy, he sounds like the dandy, he acts like that arrogant, just twat. Which, of course, sets up the plot for the next part of now the town knows what happened to Doris, and we have to get into all right, what do we do about it? And I love the fact that the mayor basically just kicks his son out and be like, get out of here, you idiot. Important decisions have to be made. You're not here for this. I'm curious, you guys, what do you think of when they're like, okay, we're gonna put her in this camp, we're gonna isolate her, lock her away to protect us all, and the doctor explains what happened 50 years ago when they tried a similar tactic, and it's like that's a bad idea. Why is it a bad idea? Well, Count attacked the town. He killed a bunch of people in retaliation for us messing with his fun.
Yep.
Oh, huh.
Well, and then that woman ended up going insane, right? Because she was, isolated, and who knows, maybe feeling partially responsible for the death of all these other people. So, but also being ostracized by the town
Mm-hmm.
and thrown into yeah. I mean, there's lots of layers to that. So, but again, like you've mentioned before, it was nice that they introduced the idea. I thought they did an excellent job of containing it. We know it's there, it's still in our mind. We remember it, but they don't belabor it. They move on. And so it's still there. It's still an important aspect in the story in the background.
And it goes to show that the vampires still have an incredible amount of control over the human population. And that's something we played around with a lot in the Message from Mars graphic novel, that, these humans are just playthings. And Magnus Lee could come there and then wipe out the entire population in like 30 seconds if he wanted to. But no, he has, his time, and he's going to wait till he finds a young lady he likes. He has to wait a couple of generations. He doesn't care. And then if he wants, and then once she's done, he'll wait another generation or two until he finds somebody else. I mean, that's another, subtle thing that's kind of happening underneath, much in the same way he deals with the mutant dude when he says, oh, maybe I'll turn you in 50 years, maybe. It's that subtle manipulation and clear manipulation that I really like.
Yeah, and again, the aspect of time, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it's I really love film and shows that talk about that because human being, our lifespans have a certain range of kind of normalcy, right? But when you talk about a vampire, effectively immortal, their perspective on time is so different.
Hmm.
And and it's like the same thing like with the last unicorn, where unicorns in that world are immortal, and as soon as she was transformed into a human, her comment was, "I can already feel myself dying."
Mm.
Right, because age has been introduced into that character. So I really love that they keep mentioning time from the two different
Hmm.
perspectives, but they do it so casually
Hmm.
because it's not a big deal. I mean, 10,000 years is just you know.
Yeah, been
Just
around.
yeah.
Whatever. I'm
It's a
bored.
life
I'll
it's
do
my
the thing.
lifespan, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah.
No, what you said made me think of the end of Green Mile. Spoiler
Mhm.
warning,
Wow.
if you haven't seen Green Mile, I'm gonna skip part of the ending, but he's realized, how long he might live for and how
Mhm.
many people he's outlived. Like, how long am I gonna live? To me, that right there
Mhm.
was the horror moment of it all. Am I cursed to live forever, just continually watching everyone die around me? And you're at that moment, you're like, immortality would suck. You're alone.
They touched on that very
Well,
well in the
yeah,
Highlander franchise as well.
yep,
You
yep,
know, Who
yep.
Wants to Live
Oh
Forever?
yeah, especially the first film. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
him losing his wife, after living his entire, a full life with her, that's the impact in that. And and it also then also plays into, and again, perhaps this is very human centric, but the loss of humanity, because when time means nothing or virtually nothing, then all the things that are important to human beings, humanity itself, doesn't mean so much. And so that might also be one of that kind of the divides between, how vampires, nobility think and how humans think, because their perspective on humanity and life is so it's so far below them, like us and ants, you know.
Yeah, and so as we get past, this just casual drop of, 50 years ago, what happened 50 years ago? And most of them don't remember. Why? Well, if I'm 60 years old, was I around this town? What do I remember? For little kids, it may just be a tragic event that they don't, it's like, that nobody wants to talk about again after
Mhm.
that. So then we move on past that of where Dee's like, what if I just kill the vampire? I'll fulfill my contract. Your problem
Mhm.
solved. And I like Doris showing her resolve here of, well, if he fails, I'll kill myself.
Yep.
I'll solve the problem because I don't want to be, you know, the vampire's toy. That's, again, we're talking about, trying to maintain what agency you can in the face of this supernatural power. Like, well, I'm going to go out as myself, go out with the boots on idea. And following that, declaration of resolution, we roll right into, hey, I came into town because I need to buy supplies for the farm. Nope, we won't sell to you. What? Why? Well, you got bit. We're all scared now. We're ostracizing you. No supplies for you. And so they, end up having to leave with everything having gone wrong and got nothing of why they came to town. And then we have this little, like, half a second scene again of their defensive field protecting the farm and some creature getting zapped by this overpowered fence. And just, again, that casual reminder of everyday life is really dangerous here. So,
Yeah, not just a fox in a hen house.
yeah, no, no. Um, and from there, we roll back into just, them trying to maintain some normalcy of Doris is tucking Dan into bed, which, you're orphaned, you're trying to take care of your younger sibling. It's a very human moment. I mean, how many times has that happened throughout history? For a variety of reasons, and we've portrayed it in story of, you lost your parents to war, disaster, car accident, and the older sibling is trying to take care of the younger ones now. And again, it's a short time on screen, but just, I think, speaks volume. And I love that throughout this movie they kept adding these little moments
Mhm.
in. You know, you've got all this violence and horror and terror and moments of humanity. What are you fighting for? You're fighting for this. And we roll straight from that little clip of family moment to D with the first appearance of Lefty making a voice note. And of course, he's needling D. And, you know, what were you doing? You're giving it, because earlier, you know, he's giving advice to Dan of how to be a man and support your sister, you know. Uh, and Lefty's like, what are you doing? You know, take it, you know, enjoy the girl, just do the things. And D's like, shut up. I love the point that one hand he threatens of him with the question of, do I actually need two hands?
Yeah. Which does have an impact later on in the show, right?
Very
I
big.
mean,
Yeah.
we'll find out, won't we?
Yeah.
Little foreshadowing.
Yeah. I also like how that rolls into D finding and examining you know, weapons that Doris has sitting around, and she explains that, you know, hey, Dad was a werewolf hunter, so that's how I know all of these skills and can fight, and why I know I needed to find someone like you to deal with the Count. It's got to be somebody who this is their sole focus, because this is the biggest game there is on the planet. Okay, fair. Again, just, you know, hint at how dangerous it is and how powerful D is. Because we still haven't seen anything from D yet as far as, you know, the ability to fight, or, you know, what makes him truly awesome, other than, you know, Doris attacking him on the road and him just kind of casually shrugging it off. He doesn't even visibly fight back. How strong are you? You just get to sit there.
Thank you for listening to Lefty Speaks, the official Vampire Hunter D podcast, hosted by Brandon Easton, Neal Fischer, and Scott McLean. This podcast is created by Unified Pictures and 9 Realms. Narration by Lauren Evallen-Muller. Recording and editing by 9 Realms. Produced by Scott McLean and Ian E. Muller. Based on the works created by Hideyuki Kikuchi. Happy hunting.